All right, so we had this Lawrence Okolie, Richard Riakporhe clash at the premiere of the new Creed film in London. There's a lot of footage going round. IFL TV posted a couple of clips of this clash, and you don't really see much. You just see Riakporhe and Okolie being held back by various people, including Spencer Fearon. Riakporhe looked like he was really upset, like he was trying to break free of the people that were holding him back and get at Lawrence Okolie. And Okolie looked like the antagonist in the situation. That's how it appeared. Now, loads of boxing fans, I don't know if it's the majority, but there's certainly loads of them, are calling this a staged situation. They're saying it's all WWE. Now, obviously, staged things do happen in boxing because it helps to sell tickets. But at the same time, real things happen in boxing too, because it is a combat sport. You got a bunch of alpha males and a certain number of narcissists and stuff like that. So real clashes are also inevitable. You see, whether this one was real or staged, you guys can make your own minds up about that. But there are some people who act like there's no such thing as a real clash like this in boxing, which is absurd for the reasons I've just described. I mean, I've been in boxing gyms since I was 12 years of age, and I've seen serious situations kick off in boxing gyms where people have grabbed koshes and other implements to try and attack people. Maybe a sparring session got out of hand, tempers frayed, and situations got serious. Yeah? What makes you think that only happens behind closed doors, away from cameras in boxing gyms? No, occasionally that's going to happen at movie premieres and, other places as well. It's inevitable, given the kind of sport it is, the nature of the sport, and the nature of the participants. Okay? Now, either way, this is beneficial for Scott. I mean, you look at, for example, David Haye and Derek Chisora when they kicked off at the Vitaly Klitschko, Derek Chisora post-fight press conference. There were people at the time saying that was staged. I mean, come on. That obviously wasn't staged. Don Charles suffered a broken jaw in that situation. Did Don Charles agree to get his jaw broken by David Haye? Obviously not. So, yeah, there are staged things in boxing for sure, but there are also real things. Either way, it benefits the promoters. Frank Warren benefited massively from that David Haye, Derek Chisora brawl at the press conference. And I'm sure Ben Shalom will benefit massively from this situation with Lawrence Okolie and Richard Riakporhe. Now, some might argue, right, or some might theorize that the two guys may not have been in on it, as in planned to have an altercation, but perhaps one of them did. Perhaps Lawrence Okolie is thinking, I want to sell a lot of tickets if I end up getting in the ring with Richard Riakporhe. And so to build the beef, let me poke the bear a bit. Let me antagonize him a bit, see if he bites, and that's going to help the promotion. So it isn't necessarily a situation where both guys have that intention, but maybe only one of them does, So I don't know what the case was, but it benefits Ben Shalom if this fight takes place. Now, Spencer Fearon did an interview with IFL, and obviously he was there. He says it wasn't staged. He says it was for real. He was, I think, holding back Lawrence Okolie in the footage that you see and telling everybody to calm down and stop it. He also says Lawrence Okolie was the antagonist. He was the one that started it. Now, why would Lawrence Okolie start it? Is it for promotional reasons? Or is it because he wants to get some type of psychological edge? When they had that interview on Sky, Lawrence Okolie and Richard Riakporhe, Lawrence Okolie said, I want Richard Riakporhe to call me out right now. And Riakporhe was kind of, how can I even describe it? He was kind of circumspect. He didn't want to start some slanging match on Sky. You know, he wanted to keep it all professional, and he said, look, if the money's right and this, that, and the other. Whereas Lawrence was like, nah, that don't get my juices flowing. That don't get my competitive spirit fired up. I want you to call me out now. You know, I want the heat. I want the smoke. Call me out. Let's get this going. And Riakporhe wasn't really on it. Why does Lawrence Okolie want to get it going? Is it mind games by Okolie? Or is it a lack of motivation for that fight? Maybe he, you know, Derek Chisora used to do this a lot, going into fights. He would start some trouble at the press conference or at the weigh-in, etc., because he needed that in order to perform to the best of his ability. He needed some needle. Is Lawrence Okolie similar? Does he, at this stage of his career, for this particular fight at least, need some needle in order to perform to the best of his ability? Now, Okolie in the past, when he's had these big rivalry fights, he hasn't put on his best performances. The first one, of course, being against Isaac Chamberlain. That was South London versus East London. There was a lot of bragging rights and so on going on there. And Okolie, although he won, he dropped Isaac Chamberlain early in the fight and he won a decision. He was clinching so excessively that it made the fight unwatchable. It was a similar situation when he fought Matty Askin. Clinching so excessively, he made it unwatchable. Even in his last fight, it was something similar. Okay, against Sislak, was clinching to a crazy extent where it became almost unwatchable after a couple rounds. It wasn't as bad as when he fought Matty Askin and, you know, some other contests, but it was still pretty bad. But in the fights where there perhaps isn't as much pressure, where there isn't perhaps as much bragging rights and so on, he has clinched far less and put on cleaner, more clinical performances, such as when he fought Krzysztof Glowacki a couple years ago. I thought that was a real clean, clinical performance by Lawrence Okolie, and he boxed really well. And, you know, after that, he also knocked a guy out early. So he is capable of those kind of performances. I just wonder whether he starts to get anxious due to the ramifications if he loses certain fights. You know, when the pressure is on, if that anxiety causes him to hold more. I suspect it does. I suspect it's a contributing factor. I don't think it's all just down to the style of the opponent. I also think a certain amount of anxiety is at play for, you know, the excessive holding. Now, how does that factor into a fight against Richard Riakporhe? Is Lawrence Okolie shooting himself in the foot by trying to create all this extra beef and hype? I don't know. Maybe it's a situation where he feels no anxiety, or maybe it's a situation where he doesn't feel up for the fight in terms of excited about it, and that worries him. You know, like he's thinking, God, I'm not feeling the way about this Riakporhe fight that I felt about, let's say, the Glowacki fight. I don't feel up for it. I need to do something, because if I go into the ring feeling like this, maybe I'm going to underperform. You know, I'm just throwing ideas out here, people. Okay, because I'm not in Lawrence Okolie's head to know exactly what's going on and what motivated him trying to antagonize Richard Riakporhe, if indeed that's what happened. Now, with Richard Riakporhe, I also think that the pressure has got to him at certain points of his career, and it is not manifested in him. Well, no, I think in the Chris Billam-Smith fight, there was a lot of holding from Richard Riakporhe, like maybe excessive holding in that fight. But Riakporhe seems to get very tight and not let his shots go when he's a bit anxious. You know, so he gets tight. So rather than hold it, he just gets tight and doesn't let the punches flow. And he is kind of a tight fighter anyway. He isn't the loosest, most fluid boxer you've ever seen. Lawrence Okolie is more loose and fluid than Richard Riakporhe. They're both the same height, 6'5". Okolie, even though he's fought at a higher level, and He's the more experienced of the two slightly in the pro ranks. Okolie is younger at 30 years of age compared to 33 years of age for Riakporhe. Interestingly, this is a statistic, a measurement, should I say, that you guys want to look at. Okolie has a significantly longer reach. Okolie's reach is 82.5 inches. Riakporhe's is only 77 inches. So will that mean that Lawrence Okolie can control things from the outside? Again, same height, but Okolie with a significantly longer reach. Now, again, as I've explained in a recent video, reach and arm length are not the same measurement, but I'm going to assume in this case that Okolie does have the longer arms than Richard Riakporhe. So will he be able to use that? I think Okolie up to this point has shown a better jab. He's shown a better ability to control a fight at long range than Richard Riakporhe. The physical strength is going to be interesting because Riakporhe appears to be a very physically strong man. Is he as physically strong as Lawrence Okolie? To date, I haven't seen a fighter who's been able to match Lawrence Okolie in terms of physical strength. Out of all of his opponents, Okolie appeared to be the stronger man. And that is really one of the biggest assets that Lawrence Okolie has, is the physical strength, because he can shut down your offense with it by grabbing and mauling and pushing you back and all that kind of thing. Will he be able to do that against Richard Riakporhe? Will he be able to shut down his offense with that physical strength on the inside? And as I say, will Okolie be able to dominate things on the outside if this fight goes ahead? We will see. Anyway, give me your thoughts in the comment section below about the beef at the premiere of Creed. Do you think it was real? Do you think it was staged? Again, either way, Ben Shalom benefits. Do you think this fight will happen? And if and when it does happen, who do you see winning and what kind of fight do you think it will be? For the longest time, I felt that Lawrence Okolie is just head and shoulders above Richard Riakporhe. But I've seen Riakporhe improve. And he may have improved to the point where I think he's got a decent chance against Lawrence Okolie. For the longest time, I thought this guy's never going to beat Lawrence Okolie. You know, based on like the Billam-Smith fight and other fights of Riakporhe that I saw, I was like, nah, this guy's not in Okolie's league. But now, I don't know, maybe he's starting to convince me a little bit, Richard Riakporhe. You know, maybe not 100%. I'm still leaning towards Okolie winning, maybe 60-40. But I give Riakporhe a better chance now than I did 12 or 18 months ago, for sure. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.